I think I didn't do anything wrong. Just tried to remind my husband what he was about to lose. That's why I flirted with his friends at my own birthday dinner. He didn't even notice. But now, with divorce papers delivered to my office, everyone acts like I deserve this. Let me explain what really happened, because nobody seems to understand my side of the story. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The upscale restaurant's private dining room should have been perfect. Soft lighting, expensive wine, all our friends and family gathered to celebrate my 32nd birthday. I'd planned everything myself, naturally. Gareth never took initiative with these things. He sat at the head of the table, but he might as well have been invisible, constantly checking his phone for work emails. "Gareth, honey, can you put that away for one night?" I asked sweetly, reaching across to touch his arm. He mumbled an apology but kept scrolling. That's when I decided to show him what he was missing. Marcus, one of Gareth's college friends, was telling a story about their old rugby days. I leaned forward, laughing a little too loudly, letting my hand rest on Marcus's shoulder. "Oh, you must have been so strong back then," I said, giving his bicep a playful squeeze. Marcus shifted uncomfortably, but I was just getting started. When David mentioned his new promotion, I practically purred. "I always knew you were ambitious. Some women are so lucky." I made sure to glance meaningfully at Gareth, who was still buried in his phone. My mother, Marilyn, laughed from across the table. "Look at my vivacious daughter. Gareth, you better watch out. Other men still notice what a catch she is." But Mara, Gareth's sister, wasn't amused. She kept shooting me warning looks, her jaw tight with disapproval. Even 8-year-old Samantha seemed uncomfortable, picking at her pasta and staying unusually quiet. "Alix," Gareth finally said, his voice strained, "maybe we could focus on the dinner." I rolled my eyes dramatically. "Oh, now you want to pay attention? I'm just being friendly with our guests. Sorry if that's too much excitement for you." The table fell silent. Marcus cleared his throat awkwardly. David suddenly found his wine glass fascinating. "You know what?" Gareth stood abruptly, tossing his napkin on his plate. "I need some air." He walked out without another word, leaving me sitting there with everyone staring. I forced a bright smile. "Don't mind him. Work stress, you know how it is." But the party was effectively over. People started making excuses, checking their watches, calling for the check. Within 30 minutes, my carefully planned birthday dinner had dissolved into awkward goodbyes and half-hearted promises to do this again soon. Mara cornered me in the restaurant's bathroom as I was touching up my lipstick. "What the hell was that, Alix?" "What was what?" I kept my voice innocent. "I was being social. Maybe if your brother paid attention to his wife once in a while." "You were throwing yourself at his friends, at your own birthday dinner, in front of your daughter." Mara's voice was deadly quiet. "You're going to lose him." I laughed, but it sounded hollow even to me. "Gareth, please. He's too comfortable to go anywhere. Besides, I wasn't doing anything wrong, just reminding him what other men see in me." Mara stared at me for a long moment, then shook her head. "You really don't get it, do you?" When I got back to the table, I found Gareth's phone tucked under my coat. He'd left it behind in his hurry to escape. I slipped it into my purse, already planning how I'd use this as an excuse to make him come home and talk to me. But as I drove home alone, Samantha had left with Gareth. I couldn't shake Mara's words. "You're going to lose him." Ridiculous. Gareth needed me. He was just being dramatic. That night, I found Gareth in the guest room, door locked. I knocked softly, holding his phone. "You forgot this," I called through the door. "Just leave it on the counter," came his muffled reply. "Gareth, come on. We need to talk about what happened. You're overreacting." Silence. I tried the handle again. Still locked. Fine. If he wanted to be childish, I'd give him space to cool off. The next morning at work, I was still fuming. Damian Royce from the sales department found me in the break room, looking frustrated. "Rough night?" he asked, his smile sympathetic. Damian was 29, charming, and actually paid attention when I spoke, unlike some people. "Just husband drama," I sighed. "Sometimes I wonder why I even try." "Want to talk about it over coffee?" That coffee turned into lunch. Lunch turned into after-work drinks. And drinks turned into something I told myself was just friendship, just someone who appreciated me for who I was. "He doesn't deserve you," Damian said one evening as we sat in his car outside my house. "You're vibrant, beautiful, full of life. Why waste it on someone who takes you for granted?" His hand found mine, and I didn't pull away. For the first time in months, I felt seen, desired, important. "I should go in," I whispered, but I didn't move. "Should," he agreed, leaning closer. "But do you want to?" The kiss was soft, tentative, then hungrier. I kissed him back, letting myself fall into the feeling of being wanted. Over the next few weeks, I lived in two worlds. At home, Gareth and I moved around each other like polite strangers. He slept in the guest room. I slept alone in our king-sized bed, texting Damian until late at night. "Missing you," I'd type. "Same. When can I see you again?" "Soon. G is working late tomorrow." It was intoxicating, having this secret, this proof that I was still desirable, still worth pursuing. When Gareth barely looked up from his laptop as I got ready for work, I'd think about Damian's compliments from the night before. When Gareth gave me one-word answers at dinner, I'd remember how Damian hung on my every word. "You're glowing lately," my mother observed during one of our weekly calls. "What's your secret?" "Just taking better care of myself," I said. "Doing what makes me happy for once." "Good for you, sweetheart. Life's too short to be miserable. If Gareth can't appreciate what he has, that's his loss." But Gareth's father, Philip, apparently had different ideas. I overheard him on the phone with Gareth one evening, his stern voice carrying through the thin guest room door. "Son, I don't know what's going on in your marriage, but you need to act before things get worse. A man protects what's his." Even Samantha seemed to sense the tension. She stopped asking me to read her bedtime stories, preferring when Daddy tucked her in. When I tried to help with homework, she'd say, "It's okay, Mommy. Daddy can help me later." It stung, but I told myself it was temporary. Once Gareth stopped being so cold and paranoid, things would go back to normal. Then one night, I was looking for a phone charger in Gareth's desk drawer when I found something that made my blood run cold. His phone, the one he'd left at the restaurant, had a recording app installed, and there were files, lots of them, all labeled with recent dates. Dates that corresponded with my lunches with Damian, with our late-night phone calls, with conversations I'd had with friends about my difficult marriage. My hands shook as I scrolled through the file names. How long had he been recording me? What exactly did he know? I couldn't confront Gareth about the recordings. That would mean admitting I'd been snooping. Instead, I threw myself into damage control, trying to control the narrative before he could use whatever he'd gathered against me. At work, I confided in my closest colleagues during our morning coffee ritual. "Things have been so hard at home," I said, letting my voice crack slightly. "Gareth's become so cold, so controlling. He questions everything I do, everywhere I go. Sometimes I feel like I'm walking on eggshells." Sarah from HR looked concerned. "That doesn't sound healthy, Alix. Have you considered counseling?" "I've suggested it, but he refuses. Says there's nothing wrong with him, that it's all in my head." I dabbed at my eyes with a tissue. I just feel so isolated, like I can't do anything right. The sympathy felt good, validating, but when I tried to get the same support from Gareth's friends, I hit a wall. Marcus didn't respond to my texts. David was suddenly too busy for the group dinners we used to have. Even casual acquaintances seemed to be avoiding me. At work, Damien was pulling away too. He'd gone from flirty text to professional politeness, seemingly overnight. "We need to cool things off," he said, when I cornered him in the supply room. "People are starting to talk." "What people? What are they saying?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Just, maybe we should keep things strictly professional for a while." Panic clawed at my chest. I was losing control of the situation. So I did what felt natural. I took it public. My Facebook post was carefully crafted. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who hurt you the most. When trust breaks down in a marriage, it affects everything. Praying for healing and truth to prevail. Marriage struggles. Stay strong. The comments poured in immediately. "You're in my prayers, hun. Stay strong, beautiful." His loss if he can't see what he has. I followed up with more posts over the next few days. Photos of me looking sad but brave. Inspirational quotes about surviving betrayal and emotional abuse. Vague references to gaslighting and manipulation. My mother rallied the family troops, organizing a girls' night to support me through this difficult time. My aunts and cousins gathered in my living room, armed with wine and righteous indignation. "Men can be so emotionally stunted," Aunt Linda declared. "They don't know how to handle a strong woman." "Gareth always seemed a little cold to me," added my cousin Jessica. "Too serious. You need someone who appreciates your spark." But not everyone was buying my version of events. Mara showed up at my office unannounced, her face thunderous. "Take them down," she said without preamble. "Take what down?" "The posts, the comments, all of it. You're destroying my brother's reputation with lies." I kept my voice steady. "I haven't lied about anything. If the truth makes Gareth look bad, maybe he should examine his behavior." "The truth?" Mara laughed bitterly. "You mean your truth. Your twisted version where you're the victim and he's the villain. I know what you've been doing, Alix. We all know." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Really?" "Because Damien's been bragging to his buddies about his conquest. Did you think word wouldn't get back to us?" My face burned with humiliation, but I kept my chin up. "My marriage problems with Gareth have nothing to do with you cheating on him? With you lying to everyone who'll listen? With you making our family look like monsters while you play the martyred wife?" Mara's voice rose. "You're pathetic, Alix, and soon everyone's going to know it." That evening, I came home to find Samantha sitting on the stairs, her little face streaked with tears. "Mommy, are you and Daddy getting divorced?" My heart clenched. "Sweetheart, where did you hear that word?" "I heard you and Daddy fighting, and Daddy was crying on the phone with Grandpa Philip. He said maybe it was time to—" She hiccuped. "Time to protect me from the situation." I knelt down and pulled her into my arms. "Everything's going to be okay, baby. Mommy and Daddy are just going through a rough patch. Adults sometimes have disagreements." But even as I said it, I heard movement upstairs. Gareth was in our bedroom, and it sounded like he was opening drawers, moving things around. I left Samantha with her coloring books and crept upstairs. Through the cracked bedroom door, I watched my husband methodically packing a suitcase. His movements were calm, deliberate, final. "What are you doing?" I asked, pushing the door open. He didn't look at me. "Taking Samantha to my parents' house for a while." "You can't just take her. I'm her mother. And I'm her father. She needs stability right now, not—" He gestured vaguely in my direction. This. What exactly is this, Gareth?" Finally, he looked at me. His eyes were red-rimmed but determined. "I'm done, Alix, with the lies, the manipulation, the public humiliation. I'm done pretending this marriage is salvageable." He zipped the suitcase closed and walked past me to Samantha's room. I followed, watching helplessly as he helped our daughter pack her favorite stuffed animals and books. "Daddy, where are we going?" Samantha asked. "To Grandpa and Grandma's house for a sleepover. Won't that be fun?" "Is Mommy coming?" Gareth's eyes met mine over Samantha's head. Not this time, sweetheart. I stood in the doorway as they walked to his car, Samantha's small hand in his large one. She looked back at me once, confused and scared, and I had to grip the door frame to keep from running after them. As Gareth's taillights disappeared down our street, I realized that for the first time in our marriage, I had no idea what he was planning to do next. The house felt enormous without them. I wandered from room to room, trying to convince myself this was just another one of Gareth's dramatic gestures. He'd cool off in a day or two, realize he was being unreasonable, and bring Samantha home. But days passed, and my calls went straight to voicemail. My texts remained unread. When I drove by his parents' house, the curtains were drawn and no one answered the door, even though I could see cars in the driveway. I tried reaching out to our mutual friends, but the responses were cold, distant, or non-existent. People who used to include me in group chats and dinner plans suddenly seemed to have forgotten I existed. At work, the atmosphere had shifted too. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms. Colleagues who had offered sympathy just days before now avoided eye contact. Even Damien seemed to go out of his way to avoid me. Desperate for allies, I threw myself into social media, crafting posts designed to generate sympathy and support. When someone you love disappears with your child without warning, it changes you. Trying to stay strong but feeling so helpless. Single mom. Heartbroken. Missing my baby. It's amazing how quickly people turn on you when you're going through the hardest time of your life, finding out who your real friends are. Fair weather friends. Staying strong. The responses were fewer now, and less enthusiastic. Some people were starting to ask uncomfortable questions in the comments. Have you tried couples counseling? Maybe give him some space to process? Two sides to every story. I deleted those comments quickly. My mother remained my staunchest supporter, calling daily with encouragement and outrage on my behalf. He has no right to keep Samantha from you, she declared. That's parental kidnapping. You should call the police. I don't think they'd see it that way, Mom. Legally, he has just as much right to her as I do. Well, it's emotional abuse then, making you worry about your own child. You should document everything for the divorce proceedings. We're not getting divorced, I said automatically, though the words felt hollow. Honey, you need to be realistic. If Gareth is willing to involve lawyers and courts, you need to protect yourself. And Samantha. The word lawyers sent a chill through me. Surely Gareth wouldn't actually. But then I remembered Philip's stern voice on the phone, talking about protecting what's his. I thought about Mara's fury, her certainty that everyone would know the truth soon. What if they weren't just talking about separation? What if they were building a case against me? I spent sleepless nights going through every conversation, every text, every social media post, trying to see them through a lawyer's eyes. Everything could be twisted, taken out of context, used to paint me as an unfit mother or unfaithful wife. The recording app on Gareth's phone haunted me. What exactly had he captured? Our arguments? My phone calls with Damien? My conversations with friends where I'd vented about our marriage? 2 weeks after Gareth left, my worst fears were confirmed. The email arrived at my work address, formal and devastating. Ms. Vera, you are hereby requested to appear at the offices of Hartwell and Associates on Friday, November 15th at 2 p.m. for a meeting regarding separation agreements and custody arrangements for Samantha Linwood Vera. Please bring identification and any relevant financial documents. Attached, you will find preliminary documentation for your review. Sincerely, James Hartwell, Esquire, Attorney, for Gareth Linwood. My hands shook as I opened the attachments. Screenshots of text messages, bank statements showing hotel charges I'd forgotten about, call logs showing the frequency of my communications with Damien, and worst of all, a transcript. Pages and pages of conversations I'd had, with Damien, with my mother, with co-workers, where I'd said things about Gareth that looked terrible in black and white, where I'd laughed about his paranoia and jealousy, where I'd called him pathetic and emotionally stunted. At the bottom of the email was a single line that made my blood run cold. Additional evidence available upon request. I stared at the screen until the words blurred together. This wasn't just about separation. This was war. And Gareth had been preparing for battle while I'd been playing games. The law office of Hartwell and Associates occupied the top floor of a gleaming downtown building. As I rode the elevator up, I tried to calm my nerves by rehearsing what I would say. I was the victim here. Gareth was the one who had abandoned his family, who had been cold and emotionally unavailable. I was just a woman who had made some mistakes while trying to cope with a failing marriage. The conference room was intimidating, all dark wood and leather chairs, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Gareth sat at the far end of the long table, flanked by his lawyer, and, to my surprise, both Philip and Mara. He looked different somehow, calmer, more resolved. Alix, James Hartwell stood as I entered. He was a silver-haired man in his 50s with kind eyes but a firm handshake. "Thank you for coming. Please, have a seat." I chose the chair directly across from Gareth, hoping to force eye contact, to remind him of what we'd once meant to each other. But he kept his gaze fixed on the papers in front of him. "Before we begin," I said, trying to sound confident, "I want to say that I think we're all overreacting here. Gareth and I have had some problems, yes, but nothing that can't be worked out with counseling and communication. Taking Samantha away from her mother, involving lawyers. This is all so extreme." Hartwell nodded politely. "I understand your perspective, Mrs. Vera. However, my client has some concerns about the stability of the home environment and the impact of recent events on Samantha's well-being." "Recent events?" I kept my voice innocent. "You mean Gareth's decision to abandon his family?" Philip made a disgusted sound, but Gareth held up a hand to silence him. "Alix," Gareth said quietly, "please don't. We both know why we're here." "Actually, I don't. You disappeared with our daughter without warning, you've been ignoring my calls, and now you're involving lawyers in what should be a private family matter. I think I deserve an explanation." Hartwell opened a thick folder. "Mrs. Vera, we'd like to discuss some concerns that have come to light regarding your recent behavior and its impact on the marriage and family dynamic." He slid a photograph across the table. It was a printout from social media, one of my posts about emotional abuse and gaslighting. "Can you explain this post?" he asked. I glanced at it dismissively. "I was venting about problems in my marriage. People do that on social media all the time." "And this one?" Another photo. This time it was a post where I'd shared an article about narcissistic personality disorder with the caption, "Sometimes you don't realize you're living with this until someone points it out." Eyes wide open. Toxic relationships. Heat rose in my cheeks. I was going through a difficult time. I was trying to understand what was happening in my relationship. By publicly accusing your husband of having a personality disorder? "I never mentioned Gareth by name," Mara snorted. "Everyone knew who you were talking about." Hartwell pulled out more papers. "Mrs. Vera, we also have evidence of communications between you and a co-worker, Damien Royce. Would you like to explain the nature of that relationship?" My mouth went dry. "Damien is a friend, a colleague. There's nothing inappropriate about—" "These text messages suggest otherwise." He slid a stack of papers across the table. I recognized them immediately. Screenshots of my conversations with Damien, the flirtatious messages, the complaints about Gareth, the arrangements to meet for drinks and work dinners that had nothing to do with work. "Can't wait to see you tonight. G is working late again. Shocker. You make me feel alive again, like I'm worth something. Wish I could wake up next to you instead of going home to Mr. Robot." "These were taken out of context," I said desperately. "They don't mean what you think they mean." "Really?" Hartwell turned to a page he'd marked with a yellow sticky note. "How should we interpret this message? Last night was amazing. I haven't felt that desired in years. Thank you for reminding me what I'm worth." The room was silent except for the ticking of an antique clock on the wall. I could feel everyone staring at me, waiting for an explanation that wouldn't come. "Gareth," I said, finally looking directly at my husband, "you know our marriage was in trouble long before Damien. You were cold, distant, buried in work. I felt invisible in my own home. I made some mistakes, yes, but they were symptoms of a bigger problem. We can fix this. We can go to counseling, start over. There are also these," Hartwell interrupted, placing another set of papers on the table. "Bank statements showing payments to the Riverside Inn on multiple occasions. The same hotel where Mr. Royce was registered on those same dates." My face burned with shame and fury. "You had me followed?" "I had our finances monitored," Gareth said quietly. "When my wife starts spending money on hotel rooms she's never mentioned, it raises questions." "And then there are the recordings," Hartwell continued. My blood turned to ice. "What recordings?" He pressed play on a small device, and my own voice filled the room. God, he's so pathetic. Sitting there with his little spreadsheets and his work emails, thinking he's so important. I swear, sometimes I look at him and wonder what I ever saw in him. It was from a phone call with my cousin Jessica, one of many where I'd vented about my frustrations. But hearing it played back in this sterile conference room, with Gareth sitting right there, it sounded cruel and heartless. "That's illegal," I said. "You can't record someone without their consent." "Actually," Hartwell said calmly, "in this state, only one party needs to consent to recording a conversation. Since these were conversations taking place in Mr. Linwood's own home, with his own recording equipment, they're perfectly admissible." He played another clip. "I don't know why I'm even trying to save this marriage. He's emotionally dead. At least Damien makes me feel like a woman again." And another. "Gareth's so clueless he doesn't even suspect anything. I could probably have Damien over for dinner and he wouldn't notice." Each recording was like a knife to the chest, not just because of how they sounded, but because of what I could see in Gareth's face as he listened to them. The pain, the betrayal, the death of whatever love he'd once felt for me. "Stop," I whispered. "Please stop." But Hartwell had more. Financial records showing my spending patterns, screenshots of dating app profiles I'd created just to see what was out there, witness statements from co-workers who'd seen me with Damien. "Mrs. Vera," Hartwell said finally, "my client is prepared to offer you a generous settlement, joint custody with primary residence going to Mr. Linwood. Given the stability of his current living situation and support system, you would have Samantha every other weekend and one evening per week, with the possibility of increased visitation as the situation stabilizes." "No," the word came out as a croak. "No, you can't take my daughter away from me." "We're not taking her away," Gareth said, speaking directly to me for the first time. "We're trying to give her a stable environment while we figure out what comes next." "I'm her mother." "And you're also someone who's been lying, cheating, and publicly humiliating our family for months," Mara said, her voice sharp with anger. "Did you think there wouldn't be consequences?" I turned back to Gareth, desperate now. "This is about revenge, isn't it? You want to punish me for being human, for having needs you couldn't meet. But destroying our family won't fix anything. Samantha needs her mother. She needs both of us." "Samantha needs parents who can provide a healthy, stable environment," Philip said, speaking for the first time. "Right now, you're not capable of that." Hartwell slid a thick document across the table. "These are the divorce papers and custody agreement. You have 48 hours to review them with your own attorney and provide a response. If we don't hear from you, we'll proceed without your input." I stared at the papers, the words blurring through my tears. "Gareth, please, don't do this. We can work it out. I'll end things with Damien. I'll delete the social media posts. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't take Samantha away from me." For a moment, his expression softened. I saw a flicker of the man who had once loved me, who had promised to stand by me through better and worse. But then he looked at the evidence spread across the table, The photos, the transcripts, the bank statements, and his face hardened again. "I can't trust you, Alix," he said quietly. "I can't trust you with our marriage, our family, or our daughter's well-being. I'm sorry, but this is how it has to be." The meeting ended with handshakes and business cards, but I barely registered any of it. I walked out of that conference room knowing that my life as I'd known it was over. The family court was nothing like the dramatic courtrooms you see on TV. It was small, cramped, with fluorescent lighting that made everyone look sickly. I sat at a table with my hastily hired attorney, a young woman named Rebecca Chen, who'd been honest about my chances from the start. "The evidence against you is substantial," she'd told me during our first meeting. "Our best strategy is to acknowledge your mistakes, show remorse, and focus on your commitment to being a better mother going forward." But as I sat there watching Gareth and his legal team organize their materials with military precision, I couldn't help feeling like I was being railroaded. Yes, I'd made mistakes, but I wasn't a monster. I wasn't an unfit mother. I deserved better than this public humiliation. Judge Patricia Morrison was a stern woman in her 60s who'd clearly seen it all before. She listened impassively as Hartwell presented his case, methodically laying out the evidence of my affair, my public disparagement of Gareth, and what he termed my pattern of manipulation and emotional instability. The recordings were played again, each one more damaging than the last. The bank statements were entered into evidence. Screenshots of my social media posts were projected on a screen for everyone to see. When it was my turn to speak, I tried to present my side of the story. I talked about feeling neglected and emotionally abandoned. I explained how Gareth's coldness and distance had driven me to seek connection elsewhere. I painted myself as a woman who had made poor choices while trying to cope with a failing marriage. "Your Honor," I said, my voice shaking with emotion, "I love my daughter more than anything in this world. Yes, I made mistakes in my marriage, but that doesn't make me a bad mother. Samantha needs her mom. She needs both her parents working together, not this adversarial situation that's only going to hurt her in the long run." Judge Morrison listened politely, but I could see in her eyes that she wasn't buying it. When I tried to explain away the recordings as taken out of context and the affair as emotional support during a difficult time, she looked skeptical. "Mrs. Vera," she said finally, "the evidence presented today shows a pattern of behavior that raises serious concerns about your judgment and your ability to provide a stable environment for your daughter. Your public statements about your husband, your extramarital relationship, and your attempts to manipulate the narrative around your marriage all speak to a concerning lack of accountability." "But Your Honor," I interrupted, "I've learned from my mistakes. I'm committed to doing better, to putting Samantha first." "The time to put Samantha first was before you embarked on an affair and began publicly attacking her father," the judge said sharply. "The evidence shows that your behavior has already had a negative impact on this child's emotional well-being." She reviewed the custody evaluation report, which recommended primary residence with Gareth based on his stable living situation, strong family support system, and Samantha's own expressed preference to stay with her father. "It is the decision of this court," Judge Morrison announced, "that primary physical custody of Samantha Linwood Vera shall be awarded to the father, Gareth Linwood. The mother, Alix Vera, shall have supervised visitation every other Saturday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., with the possibility of expanded visitation pending successful completion of family counseling and demonstration of improved stability." Supervised visitation. The words hit me like a physical blow. I wasn't just losing primary custody, I was being treated like a danger to my own child. "Your Honor," Rebecca said, "we'd like to request unsupervised visitation." "Denied," the judge said firmly. "Given the evidence of manipulation and emotional instability, the court believes supervision is necessary to ensure the child's well-being during this transition period." The divorce was finalized with similar efficiency. I was awarded a minimal settlement, given that my affair was considered grounds for divorce in our state. The house would be sold, with proceeds split between us after Gareth's legal fees were paid. As the court session ended, I watched Gareth and Samantha leave together, her small hand in his. She looked back at me once, her face confused and sad, and I had to grip the edge of the table to keep from collapsing. My mother, who had attended the hearing, tried to offer comfort. "This isn't over, sweetheart. We'll appeal. We'll find a way to fight this." But I knew it was over. The evidence was too overwhelming, the damage too complete. I'd lost everything: my husband, my daughter, my home, my reputation. And the worst part was, sitting there in that empty courtroom with only the bailiff and the court reporter for company, I finally understood that I had no one to blame but myself. The bailiff approached my table, holding out my phone, which had been entered as evidence. "Ma'am, you can take this now." I took it with trembling hands, staring at the device that had been used to document my own destruction. The screen showed 17 missed calls from my mother, dozens of unread texts from friends and family asking what had happened, but there was nothing from Gareth, nothing from Samantha, nothing from the people who had mattered most. I walked out of that courthouse alone, carrying only my phone and a folder full of legal documents that spelled out the ruins of my life. The afternoon sun was bright and warm, and somewhere in the city, people were going about their normal lives, working, laughing, loving, building the kinds of relationships I'd thrown away. I stood on the courthouse steps for a long time, watching the world move past me, finally understanding the true cost of my choices. And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I had no one left to blame but myself. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching,